This video is supported by Golden Era Muscle. Please visit goldeneramuscle.com for training information and supplements. Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here. Today I'm going to start a new series focusing on Frank Zane's principles and methods for developing the thigh and calves. Now, to sum it up, Frank Zane was a very big believer in having balance in both thigh and calf muscular development, and in his opinion this was the real secret to championship quality legs. So that's what we're going to be focusing on the next few videos. Let's start off with this amazing aesthetic pose. It's a kneeling pose which is barely seen nowadays, only brought back recently in what is called classic physique. But what I love mostly about this shot is that Frank's ability to hold such poses has to do with his amazing flexibility and also the strength that he actually has in his legs. A lot of bodybuilders have, I would have to admit, now that especially mass monsters can simply not do these exercises because their bodies are not in proportion, they are overly developed, and they don't have this flexibility or breath control or waist control to be able to hold these positions. I mean, look at this. Frank Zane not only is looking absolutely defined, symmetrical and proportional, but he's got veins all over his arms, and he's even daring to hold a vacuum in this pose. It's fantastic. You can see the definition in his thighs, upper thighs, down to his calves. It's a fantastic shot, and of course, only with a beautiful aesthetic and symmetric physique can you actually pull this kind of pose off. Let's have a look at the Frank Zane's methods and principles and beliefs system that he actually had in developing the thigh and the calf. Now, one of Frank Zane's major criticisms, especially in the late 70s, was that his observations were that many bodybuilders would focus a lot on their arms and their chest and end up with impressive upper bodies and probably overdeveloped upper bodies, whereas their lower bodies would, in other words, look like chicken legs, basically underdeveloped, out of proportion, and basically led to an unsymmetrical physique. Now, one of the reasons, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger initially, when he entered the Mr. Universe, I believe it was his first time in the US, and he actually lost against Frank Zane, was because of his poor thigh and calf development, as clearly shown in this photo from Muscular Development, I believe, in the late or mid 60s. Now, in this case, Frank Zane won. He beat him. Simply, he had superior leg development and definition. From this, Arnold actually realized how important leg development was, and that is Frank's point. It's very important to train the whole body. Hence, the whole body is important to train, not be selective. And therefore it is very important to start training legs correctly from the very, very beginning. Now, one of the most important principles of Frank Zane's method in developing the thigh and the calves and to actually achieve championship legs was proportion. And in this case, one has to balance the development of the thigh and the calf muscles. Once size is achieved in both symmetry and shape should be the focus of the routine. And as he puts it, put the tape measure away once you have size. Here's a great shot of Frank Zane, and you can see the proportion in his whole physique. His upper body is not overdeveloped, and neither is his lower body. Everything looks streamlined and in proportion, hence he's always remembered for his phenomenal symmetrical and aesthetic physique. Now, what is Frank Zane's opinion on heavy squatting? Well, having read his booklets recently, he believes that heavy squatting is very important as a size builder, and so therefore one can achieve great size, especially in the thighs, from heavy squatting. But once sufficient size has been achieved, shape and symmetry and proportion again should be the most important factors in your routine. He makes a very important point in stating that larger legs make the upper body look small, and it will also make, especially larger thighs, will actually make your calves look small. Now this is a very good example of what he means when we look at Big Ramy, who's a recent bodybuilder that I'm sure you're all aware of. And you can really see how overdeveloped his thighs are. Yes, he's, in this case I think it's his left thigh, he's shaking it out as he usually does. But I mean, the bulges that are coming out just look like tumors really. I think it throws off his calf and thigh balance. There is no balance. His calves look so tiny in comparison to his thighs. His thighs are absolutely monstrous. And although his upper body is huge, one could say that his thighs are in proportion to his upper body. His calves are definitely not. So what does Frank Zane truly believe a perfect leg should have? What qualities represent the perfect leg development? Well, number one on his list, the number one thing is having large diamond-shaped calves, which I have to admit is very difficult, especially because your calf development will always be determinant on your genetics. Although genetics can always be overcome by hard training, I do really also believe that genetics will limit the calf development. But ideally, large diamond-shaped calves are number one on the list. Well-developed hamstrings are second. It's great to have large thighs and calves, but having shallow thighs, especially from side shots, it makes your ass look big, and like that there's a big gap between your hips and your calves. So well-developed hamstrings are second on his list. Streamlined muscular thighs are very important. By that he means no overly developed thighs, because again it throws off the balance. As he put it, when he was doing lots of squatting, heavy squatting, for example 10 reps with 400 pounds, it's quite a lot, and his thighs were well over 27 inches, and he started studying his own photos, all that stood out was his thighs, and he actually stopped heavy squatting for a while and just focused on getting his thighs streamlined and more muscular as opposed to having more size. And having said that, he focused on the fourth point here, which is good separation of the thigh muscles all the way from the knee to up into the hip insertions. Having beautiful separation gives that wonderful defined look to the thigh, which again is a attribute very important for obtaining championship style legs. And I like what he puts as the fifth and important point, which is a moderate sweep, not an exaggerated sweep to the thighs, which too much outer thigh development would actually throw off again the physique, but to have a wonderful V taper, having a moderate sweep is rather pleasant as opposed to an overdeveloped sweep. So I end this initial video discussing the balance, the importance of the balance between the thigh and calf development with this amazing shot of Frank Zane on the beach. This is one of my favorite shots of Frank Zane because you really can see from head to toe how everything is so symmetrical and in proportion. Truly one of the most aesthetic physiques of all time. He's got a wonderful V-taper, full arms and forearms are veiny, serratus, he's pulling in the vacuum, chest is well developed, tiny waist, and then you've got appropriate streamlined and not an over-exaggerated development of the thighs, and at the bottom, wonderful, thick, and diamond-shaped calves. It's a phenomenal shot of Frank Zane. It's just beautiful. And again, no wonder he was called the statue. It's a wonderful shot, and yeah, I think it really does represent one of his best photos ever taken. Hope you've enjoyed this first video on thigh and calf development on the next part of the Frank Zane series. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't to the Golden Era Bookworm, and leave me your comments, and thank you for watching. This is the Golden Era Bookworm. Bye for now.